Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. It's only rained for about 7 days straight. I finally got the last of the patio stones down. Now, if you can remember in the last video, I was only going to go with 2. And as I specified in it, you always want to leave yourself with a little extra room. And lo and behold, I seen that the 20 inches wasn't going to be quite enough, so I ended up going with an extra row of stone, which I'm glad I did. It got me out past the edge of my drip line, and I think everything is going to work along just fine. So anyway, today we're going to start another do-it-yourself job, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a hydraulic thumb on my BH70 backhoe, which is attached to my B2601 Kubota compact tractor. Stick around, and I'm glad you come back. Okay, guys, for today's project, what I want to do is take this cylinder that I picked up at our local Princess Auto, which is the Canadian equivalent to Harbor Freight, and replace this mechanical thumb adjustment. So, it doesn't look like there's a whole pile to it, but actually, guys, there is, because in order to get the right size of cylinder to fit here without getting too big, and the right size of eye in our cross piece, I had to go with an 1.5-inch bore. But when you buy an 1.5-inch bore 1510 utility cylinder, which I think it stands for 1.5-inch bore 10-inch stroke, and that's what this is, you end up with a 3/4-inch pin diameter, and your diameter on your pins for your mechanical thumb that I originally purchased through Kubota is 1 inch. So I had to get new cross tees. So did that really matter? No, it didn't, because these have to come off regardless, because when you purchase the cylinder, the fittings are either up or they're going to be down, and neither one of them is an ideal situation. I'm going to put a bit of an angle on them to get them to come out and up and feed the lines through the boom. And also, if you look when you purchase just the generic cylinder, the grease zerk holes are at the very ends. It's no problem for the back one, but for the front, where the thumb has to actuate, if you get anything in your bucket at all, it's going to knock that fitting off. So what I'm going to do with the replacement cross tubes is spin it around so I can have the zerk fitting around there, which will be somewhere on the inside, so where it's going to be least susceptible to getting smacked with either a rock or debris once I get it on. So that's going to be the start of our project. So first thing we want to do is remove the retaining pins, which I've already done, and get these pins out of the way and drop this mechanical actuation device off of there. I don't know what you want to call it, but anyway, it's got to come off. So we're going to try and get this pin shoved out. Oh, and actually she's coming out pretty good. Well, that should allow this to separate. There we go. Well, that can come out. So we need this pin, because this pin is going to be used with our hydraulic cylinder. Give it a little tap. Hopefully it comes out. Oh yes. Set the hammer down. And there. Pins are out. A little bit of moisture on it too. So there is no grease fittings in the mechanical thumb whatsoever. So when we use it, it's not going to get used a whole pile as far as it goes for, you know, repetitiveness, but I believe it's always better to have grease on pins. But we have our old mechanical thumb off. We're going to need a couple measurements. Now the measurement we're going to need, so for our bucket end, we'll call it cross tube this is the width we want, which is 1.5 inches. Cross tubes are longer. The shortest I could get was, I think, 2 3/4 or 2.5. Anyway, so that one is 1.5 inches. This one now is 2 5/8. So actually, we'll just use this one here and take it down a little bit on each side. I do not have a lathe, so I can't cut just a smidgen off it, but I can bolt it in my handy dandy vise here and take a little bit off the sides so we can get it in. So 2 5/8 for this lad, 1.5 inches for that one. Okay, so since we want to keep, these are pre-drilled, these cross tubes that I bought from Princess Auto, so I want to keep my grease zerk in the center of my cylinder. So what I'm going to do, and I always start 1 inch in, because this is okay if you're using it to hang on to the end, but anyway, I just use the next inch in to get my measurements. So it's 1.5 inches is what's required for the bucket end. So we're going to make a mark at 1 inch and at 2.5. So that should give us 1.5 inches. Okay. So what I had to do here, because my vise doesn't get this catch the cross tube very well, in order to keep this cross tube from going into a low Earth orbit while I make contact with it, I got my handy dandy C-clamp here holding it in place, and I left it a little bit longer because what I would rather do is take as much meat as I possibly can off without taking too much, and then I'll take the angle grinder with the flap disc and cut it down to its appropriate length. Okay, now after I've taken my flap disc, I left it about 1/8 of an inch too big on the chop saw, because the chop saw is not a precision instrument in any way, shape, or form. So I then dressed it up to the 1.5 inches that's required. And one best thing you can do is, when you're close to your whatever you're working on, is he can come back and go for a reference. So now that just fits in there, and this is still pretty hot, but we've just got enough clearance there where the grease is going to be able to do its thing. Perfect. So that's what we want for our bottom cross tube. Now for the, we'll say, the boom end of our cross tube modification. We don't need the chop saw for it, so we're going to take it off of our little work table. And we'll do another quick measurement. I believe I said it was 2 5/8. Got my measure tape here. Yeah, 2 5/8 of an inch. And our Princess Auto one is 2 3/4. So what I'll do, I'll just go with the flap disc on each end, take a little bit off of each side, bring it down. Okay. Okay, guys, now I'm going to take the original cross tubes off of the cylinder because they're no good to us anymore. Just going to use the angle grinder with a cutoff wheel. Now, I hope I don't get too much heat yet at this end. I'll keep an eye on it. If I have to pull the ram out a little bit, the piston and the seals are packing. It's all down at this end right now at this current moment. But I don't think we're going to get her that warm where it's going to create any problems just yet. When I go to weld the new ones on, this will be pulled right out, and I'll make sure and wrap the chrome on my piston so it doesn't get scored. You do not want to have that get any divots in it. So anyway, we're going to cut the cross tubes off, and we'll get to it. This next step, you're going to have to be very square. You want your cross tube to be exactly 9 degrees to your ram. So I taped up my ram so there's no sparks going to hit my ram. I had to pull it out. I put it in my cross square vise, and we're going to tack it in place, and hopefully we can go. I'm using 70/18 rod. I like to use 7018 outside because you don't have to worry about the wind. Plus, when you have a low hydrogen rod, I think it's around, for every inch of weld, it's about a 3-ton force. So I really like to use the 7018. MIG is okay, it has its place, but when I'm working outside, when I'm doing stuff that you want to have a little bit of strength behind, it's always best to use 7018 for most fabricating applications. Okay, thanks. Okay, sometimes you run into issues. What happened when I had it on the far side, I was very close with this fitting because I did put a bit of an angle on it where the cylinder cross tube comes. There's not a whole pile of clearance, but there's enough here for the actuation of the cylinder. Now I don't have anything hooked on, no hydraulics yet, but I can check my stroke. That's fine. That's fine. There's very little movement here, but it is not contacting the side of the boom. So it should be okay. So that's going to be the travel of my hydraulic thumb now once I hook up my lines. And there now, this fitting I had to watch too because it was going to hit my thumb there. So I almost had to come out on a straight 90 to get away with my clearance. So I got my hoses just kind of roughly scraped through. Nah, it's not scraped, but pulled through to see where things are going to be, what they're going to line up at. So I'm going to get ahead to, I'm going to go ahead to putting the lines on, and we're going to plumb it into the one of my rear remotes. Then I'm going to take it all back apart, paint it up the Kubota orange, and hopefully all goes well. Give her a test run. So as you see, I got my hoses on now. I snaked them all through the boom and come back up and hook them to my one set of rear remotes. And I made sure I put sleeve on. And where I come out from behind where the dipper is, I'm going to leave this kind of loose because with the boom moving and knuckling, it's going to bind if I don't. So we're going to leave that as such. I'll give you a little quick demonstration, then I'm going to have to peel that cylinder off and paint it. Going out. Right. That's the length of travel. That's what we get. Right on, let's give her the paint job. For a little bit of a light sanding, I just had a scrap piece of sandpaper just to take the shine off. Got a couple more spots here. We just want to dull it a little bit. Took that sticker off. Get it around. I'll give her a shot of the brake clean. Another clean rag. Wipe it off. I got my grease fittings installed. I am going to give it a prime. I should have sort of a gun hanging up, but we're using the floor of the trailer, so. Now I'm going to give everyone a kind of a parts rundown on the things purchased to do this build. So I started out with a 1510, which is an 1.5 inch utility cylinder by 10-inch stroke. I picked that up at Princess Auto, and because it's an 1.5 inch bore cylinder, it only comes with 3/4 inch cross tubes. So then, in order to attach this to where the mechanical thumb used to go, I had to buy 2 3/4 inch cross tubes by 1-inch pinhole size to weld on to both ends of my cylinder. to get to my hydraulic fittings. Number 6 ORB is the size at the cylinder, and then I converted it to pipe thread. So these are 1/4 inch pipe thread fittings. So a number 6 ORB 90 to a 1/4 inch national pipe female swivel. And when you buy the hoses, they all come pre-made. It's the cheapest, most economical way to buy your hoses these days. Most places, I think Tractor Supply, your Princess Auto, or I'm not sure about Harbor Freight if they have much of that in stock, but if you buy them pre-cut and pre-made, they're male ends, male 1/4 inch pipe on the hoses that I bought. They're the easiest way and the most, like I say, most economical way to go. I think the 3-foot section from here to here on the boom was around $15. The 4-foot section, I used a foot longer because of the extra travel on my cylinder. Did roughly the same spot. And when I joined it here, so this one was about 16 bucks, 15 bucks, and I think they're 20 for the 6-foot sections. So I needed 2 6-foot sections. And where I join them, you use a 1/4 by 1/4 national pipe thread union. They're non-swivels, so I put it together first and routed it through. Now, with that 6 feet, it didn't quite get me to the back of my remotes. I had 2 extra 20-inch chunk of 1/4 inch. So if you get 2 2-footers, you'll still need 2 more unions, so a total of 4 unions. And your quick connect ends that go on your remotes. Now, when I bought my tractor, my rear remotes came with 4 sets of quick connects. So I used 2 for my top link, and now I'm using 2 for my hydraulic thumb. So if that kind of makes sense, guys, and by all means, I highly recommend. This was 0.90 shielding. It's basically a guard that goes over your hydraulic hoses. I highly recommend it because not only does it provide wear resistance, it also provides UV resistance. So if your backhoe is outside for any length of time, you'll want to make sure that that's on there. Keeps your hoses from cracking and having to change them too often. And that's usually what'll happen is the outsides will crack, moisture will get on that wire, they'll rust, and then you start bending them, and that's when you blow a hose. So, word of caution, this 1.5-inch cylinder is competing when you're grabbing something with this 2.5-inch cylinder. So on a hydraulic system, I'm just going to do very basic here. It doesn't matter when both are hooked up to the exact same pump, the square inches that's on the back of this piston inside this tube has a greater amount of force than it's on this 1.5-inch. So, but if you ever watched videos where guys have overextended their loader cylinders on their bucket and they're back dragging with them straight out, that's at the weakest point with the ram. So when you have this big lad fighting against this little ram, you could tweak it when it's fully extended. So I don't recommend when you have that fully extended that you try to put as much force on that as you can. So if you're using it as a grapple, do so with it at about halfway and closer into you. So I'm just going to give you a quick demonstration on that now. I'll fire it up and kind of show you what we do. So now, as you can see, when it's out like that, that's when it's most susceptible to bending, because you can see it's really has enough power to overpower that cylinder. But if we can bring it in a little bit. Now you're grabbing stuff here, Now it's not tweaking your ram. So as I said earlier, make sure if you do this, that you do most of your functions with it's bottomed out. So do most of your functions with the cylinder not fully extended, and I don't think you'll have any problems. So anyway, guys, I really appreciate all the good comments in the last few weeks and throughout the whole time I put any videos out. And thank you so much for all the new subscribers, and anybody that's returning. Thanks again for coming back and watching this whole episode. I really appreciate it. And if you like what you see, give me a thumbs up. And if you don't mind, hit the subscribe button. That keeps the channel growing. And really get out and enjoy this weather that we're having now. And we'll catch you on the next one.